Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
Hello, I am Joel McLeod, and welcome to the Nanofiber. For the last few months, the news cycle has been filled with stories of the Ontario government's mismanagement of public dollars. We've talked before about the Skills Development Fund a little while ago with Laura Walton, the Ontario Federation of Labour president, regarding the funneling of tax dollars to private companies. When that episode aired, it was revealed that numerous substandard contracts had been issued to many companies with ties to the Ontario PC government, a scandal, in my opinion, that is shaping up to be worse than ad scam ever was. More recently, the Ontario government announced that they are pushing ahead with the 401 tunnel, contracting out almost a $10 million fee to consultants to see if they can come up with a different conclusion about its feasibility that differs from their provincial experts. And of course, there's the recent $75 million ad campaign launched in the United States to take on Trump's tariffs that did the job of ending negotiations and earned a stern rebuke from Prime Minister Carney. If this were a Liberal government, it would be considered on its last leg. Yet, instead, according to the polls, the Ontario government is sitting at approximately a 52% approval rating in the latest polling. How is this the case? Why can't the opposition hold them to account? Or it's a matter that Ontarians are okay with all of this? I thought it was time to talk politics and about what is going on actually at Queen's Park. This time I reached out to a friend of the podcast, Frank Domenic, to talk about the Ontario government's track record to date and just where exactly are the Ontario NDP and the Ontario Liberals on these files. Okay, thank you, Frank Domenic, coming back once again. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well. This is an episode that I wanted to do, and then just more and more things just kind of kept piling on. I just said, I can't keep up. So we're just going to do a big thing on just the kind of the scandals that the Ford government has been just layering on one week after the other, it seems, since September almost. Frank, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
I'm doing A-okay. I'm just, I'm trying to survive in Doug Ford's Ontario, just like everyone else.
Well, let's dive into it, because the one episode we did back, listeners can go back in the catalog. We did a two-parter on the school boards. And that was the question, hypothetically, like, should school board reform? We're all in favor of better use of tax dollars and whatnot. The idea of school board reform, I think, is something that people are up for debate generally in the province. We always want to know, how can we do things better? However, I think with the current iteration of Doug Ford coming in, with Paul Calandra as the Minister of Education, just yanking elected boards out, replacing it with, I'm going to be diplomatic here, questionable choices. And most recently, we added on to it the fact that that those single individuals are now raking in $350,000 of school board's money. It's not
$350,000, and they're technically not even working 5 days a week, because they're only being paid for, I think it's like 3 days, and they're not even full days. So technically, these aren't even full-time employees making $350,000. That is the biggest waste of taxpayer dollars I have ever seen.
Not to mention, I believe the Toronto School Board, which is the largest school board in the country, collectively, and that's, I think, 20 or 22 trustees elected to that board. Listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, but that budget is roughly around $550,000 a year for 22 school board trustees. One individual is walking away with $350,000 of the school board's money. This is money that was slated that it's not being paid out by the government, by the Ministry of Education. This is money that a school board could be putting into new schools, textbooks, any hiring more EAs in high schools. Who knows?
And you know what? Since you brought up the number of trustees, I think that it would be inappropriate for me to not take the moment to acknowledge my friends, many of them who I've met over the course of making content, who are school trustees in both the Catholic and the public boards, as well as advocates who I know and work with, the Ontario Autism Coalition, and many other interest groups involved in special education. These are all people who have come out to me and basically said that we're looking at about maybe 10% of, on average, the Ontario parent population who would typically reach out to trustees, especially with issues for their children, if they have autism or if they have, like, I've reached out to my trustee personally. And my kid's only been in school since September, right? I'm a fresh parent in terms of having my kids in the public system, because she's in JK. So the fact that roughly 10% of Ontario parents who would normally be reaching out to a trustee for one issue or the other now have zero way of contacting their trustee in certain regions, to me is a gross abuse and manipulation of our electoral system. And it's an erosion of democracy. It's a waste of money. And it's basically a slap in the face, because it seems like Paul Calandra is doing what Stephen Lecce was too scared of doing. Lecce still thinks that he's going to be prime minister one day, and Paul Calandra knows that this is the end of the road for him. This is his last time kicking the can. So he might as well destroy whatever he can while he has the chance to do it.
What I get, I do think there's a bit of just a reckless abandonment of the system. I could understand maybe going to the public saying, listen, because this all came from, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the government of the abuse of tax dollars by the Brantford Grand River School Board, Grand Erie School Board, anyways, down in Brantford, Catholic school board trustees who flew to Italy to look for art on the.
For sure, fire them. Let's get rid of those people. Easy.
So, and I can understand. Let's review, maybe limit what you can expense on. Maybe just kind of you can't expense it unless it's directly tied. I think would be reasonable and acceptable.
Easy peasy. I think that across the board, those are things that are easy wins, and they're common sense, right? If conservatives are supposed to be common sense, why aren't we doing the actual common sense things?
What gets me though is the blatant cronyism. I mean, the people who have been chosen to fill these roles are not former educators. They're not former board trustees who have since retired. They are not, academics who focus on
former
education.
Conservative MPPs.
Yes.
We have donors. We have people who are otherwise associated with the Conservative Party. Literally every single person in some way has either contributed to Doug Ford as a politician or otherwise are connected to other conservatives.
And I mean, that's the thing is, I don't know if we're going to see the results pan out. I mean, that's the thing is with this structure is that there's so much cloak and dagger behind it that there's no benchmarks for success. Like, we can't say they've been given a mandate to achieve X, Y, and Z. So we can.
Well, actually, I have a benchmark for success for you right now. So the government actually took over the London Catholic District School Board. Okay, The London Catholic District School Board is the fastest growing school board in all of Ontario. They took over the school board last year. So they haven't appointed one of these $350,000 people, but the ministry did take over, just like they took over Peel and some of the other boards like Ottawa Carleton. They took over the London Catholic District School Board. And guess whose budget went up by, I think it was somewhere between 25 and 40%. I can't remember the exact number, but it went up by double digits. The London Catholic District School Board. So if the government taking over these school boards is supposed to rein in the budget and control spending and to allow for things to be more seamless for parents and for students, I'm sorry, that's absolute goddamn bullshit, because the government is just making these school boards spend more money, waste more money, and force us into privatization, because that's the only end goal of this. There is nothing, I cannot perceive anything else that they want to do other than to degrade the quality of education and to force privatization or otherwise a voucher system onto us. Because don't forget, back in 2018, when Doug Ford first took office, the Ministry of Education was floating a voucher system program. That was their original goal. This has not left their minds. It has only been there for the last 8 years, waiting to be unearthed.
And I think the fact that they're using this as a smoke and screen cover to expedite that process. The thing is, I don't know what the end goal is. Like taking over these boards one at a time and toying with the idea of, oh, I let's eliminate elected school board trustees altogether without a, like, it's one thing to say let's eliminate them. If you present, this is what we want to bring in its place, we think this system is more accountable, this is more, and we could have that discussion instead of just saying, yeah, we just need to get rid of them. Well, what do we do then? How are we? And that's, we'll get into the smoke and dagger and the cronyism bit. I'm amazed at this kind of naked ambition of this. Is that you're right? I mean, that voucher system was touted back when Stephen Lecce was Minister of Education, and that was never told, no, we're not doing that. Now, one thing Doug Ford is an expert at is reversing track the minute it gets hard and the minute the public gets angry. And that's why I suspect we've seen a bit of a stallout on this. Paul Calandra strikes me as a bit more of a stubborn guy, that he's just like, no, we're doing this.
Paul Calandra, for those who are unaware, and for those who know some people in political circles, if you know anybody who knows anything about Paul Calandra or the Conservatives, Paul Calandra is notoriously kind of a hard person to work with. He is a bit of a butthole. Okay, I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to be aggressive about it, but I have heard people use extremely tense language when describing what it is like trying to discuss things with Paul Calandra. So I think the truth is that he is an ideologue. He truly believes that what he is doing is what's in the best interest of his belief system. I don't think he thinks it's what's in the best interest of Ontarians or Ontarian children. I think it's that he has an end goal. And if his end goal is the degradation of a public system, this is the best way to do that. That to me, that's how it reads. I can't see any other reason.
For the time being, I'm going to agree with you because I haven't seen any alternative put forward that makes me disagree with that, given the track record that this government has had. I do want to go back to the cronyism of the $350,000 going to Tory insiders, because if anything, I would argue that's the theme of this fall. I would not say fall session. This legislature's not really sitting at the moment, but like basically in the fall, it's been just coming out like the Skills Development Fund has come out, and that thing
hundreds of millions.
I would say this: the Liberal Party got tagged with ad scam with Chrétien and Paul Martin in in Quebec, floating money to Liberal insiders in Quebec. Scandal, justifiably upset by the public. This strikes me as 1,000 times worse. This is just naked.
It seems when I'm looking at it, it seems like it's the largest transfer of funds to political insiders in Canadian history. I have not been able to see a scandal that is the same dollar value, especially when adjusted for inflation, that even comes close to this, because it's expected that over $750 million has been given directly to people who are connected to the Ford government, which is disgusting.
And that's just it. Like, this isn't. So I would argue this is a plan that got away. The bad guys got in, they took away. It seems like this program is tailor made for this insider dealing. This, because it's the people who are going are the ones who went to the Stag and Doe barbecue. These are the people who go to buy the tickets and the tables.
Doug Ford campaign manager, his company, everybody who he lobbies for magically got hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. But I will push back on one thing. You made it sound as though they created this system so that they could give money back to their donors. I disagree with that on the principle that the Skills Development Fund, as it exists, fundamentally a good idea. Where it went from a good idea to I can give money to my friends is when they made it so that the minister could override the process. Mm-hmm. The original way it was intended was that they were going to have this low, medium, and high system, and they were supposed to give as much money as possible to the high. Now we're seeing as much money as possible has been given to the low. Why? Because the minister overrode those things. So if we got rid of the ability for the minister to override the decisions, magically this program becomes an actual great program that can do really good things. But instead, Doug Ford's giving money to strip clubs.
Well, that's the thing, is that we're getting money. Yeah.
It's jarring to hear that, right?
It's ridiculous. Like, I don't care about this if it's strippers. Like, quite frankly, fine. It's the fact that it was the man just in case people aren't aware of what we're talking about, is at the CNE in Toronto, there's a nightclub or a property that is a nightclub. It gets changed over a few years because that's the industry of nightclubs. But the owner of the property is a Tory insider, Tory donor, very much
supplied all the alcohol to Ford Fest for years.
He's their guy, and he's getting this skills development fund. Now, the argument that he's made is it's a burlesque show and it's a little bit risque, but it's arts and culture and entertainment. Well, the Trillium website went to this venue to check out, well, how's this burlesque show going? And it's essentially just a strip club.
And people were offered $400 to come to the back room with me.
Right.
Oh, weird. It's a weird burlesque club thing to do.
It's what gets me about it is just they're not even hiding it. Like David Piccini, the minister in charge of this file, is photographed in row 1 at a Leafs game with one of the donors to the party and one of the applicants to this system. Like, I don't understand how, politically speaking, you would say I want to be photographed in this situation.
Well, and the boxes, the seats were owned by that developer, which means that for him to have those tickets, he must have not paid for the ticket himself. He must have bought them off of somebody else. And there's no record of that. There's no proof of that. He says he bought the tickets himself, but there's no evidence. So what we're seeing is he was gifted something. He went to that person's, I think he went to their wedding or something. Like, there was a whole bunch of other stuff involved in there.
There is a more intimate relationship than just a donor.
His wedding, I think his wedding was in France or something. It was a whole thing. Like,
yeah. But to the front row of the Leafs game is not like, you're not up in the rafters. You're not like, like these are choice seats.
It is a experience that the majority of Ontarians will never ever get to experience.
No,
right? And more people got to go see the Jays in the World Series than on average people will get to sit in the front row at Leafs games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that is true. But what gets me is, like, it's the most other politicians, most other ministers would realize, I appreciate the offer, I will reject it because I don't know how I'm going to go to the press the next day at the scrum and defend this. I'm parting with, I have to draw the line there. No, David Piccini says, yeah, I'll go, sure. And then what gets me is the next day, I believe Colin D'Amelio or one of the reporters of the scrum asked him about it. He said, oh, this is all nothing burger. It's a nothing burger. Like, nobody cares.
Called it a nothing burger, I think, after his wife was also linked to the skills development fund scandal. Yeah. So like specifically, it was like he called it a nothing burger, and then 24 hours later, it turns out his wife was also part of this. So yeah, it's a nothing burger because he doesn't want people to dig into his personal life. Well, guess what? When you abuse your political power, people are going to dig into why you're abusing your political power. And if you're advantaging yourself, your family, your friends, well, that isn't a nothing burger. That's a huge goddamn issue.
This whole thing is just, it reeks to high heaven, and which this is going to bring me to the next issue. And that was of course, we can't escape this dumb of dumb ideas. And that is a tunnel underneath the 401 that Doug Ford is just a dog with a bone on this one, despite the
longest tunnel in the world, built on water, super high water table. Like, great idea. I can't see how this could possibly go wrong.
I can't imagine driving it in when we get a flash flood, downpour, pouring into a tunnel underneath the 401. How many people are going to be eager to be trapped underneath there in a rush hour commute?
And believe me, I wish it was possible. Like this is one of those things where, like, I truly wish that this was a doable thing. I wish a double-decker 401 was possible, because, like, as much as I'm, like, not really big on the 413 and I'm not really too big on highways as much because of induced demand, there are certain infrastructure projects that I understand fundamentally why the average person would want them. So I wish this was possible, but it's not. And the fact that he is now, he knows for a fact, because they spent 4 years in government being told you cannot do this. And now he's going to give $9 million to a company, and he's going to try to get a yes out of them, because he's saying, we know it's possible. We know it's possible. We know it's possible. Not only do we know it's possible, we're going to make Liuna build it, because they're going to always give things to their buddies too.
But and again, this is the theme that I'm trying to get back to is, yes, he was going to WSP as a consultancy to the $9 million contract for them. They're going to be yes men and say, sure, you can build this way, or they're going to say, no,
Technically, it's feasible.
So are flying cars. Technically, it's doable, but is it really? No. But we're going to fork over $9 million for this. He's going to Leuna saying, hey, you're going to get all the jobs to build this thing. And of course, Leuna's like, yeah, great. We're all for it. Again, another Tory insider who goes to the barbecue and is expecting these big tax-funded cash outs.
Well, they keep saying that they always do competitive procurement processes, and they always have, but it's never competitive. It's always people know ahead of time who's being picked. And so how can you get the best bang for your buck if the person knows they're going to be chosen?
Right. And again, like how is it that more of this, like, we're just getting at the phase of the Doug Ford era, reign, whatever you want to call it, where it's just they're like the whatever veil of legitimacy is just being thrown away. They're like, I'm floored at just, they're not even hiding the corruption anymore. Like we just said,
after the third term started, they gave up on pretending. And it's gotten so much worse. And I think it's because a lot of them know that this is it. I think after these 4 years, either Doug doesn't run again, or they know that sooner or later the tides will turn. So I think that these next 4 years are going to be the roughest 4 years out of Doug Ford's 12-year ugly dynasty.
Okay, that's a good point, because I do want to get into this. I'm going to push back on you. I don't think there's a change on the horizon. I really don't. I don't know where that political wall is like the political fist coming down.
Mart's dead in the water. People, the NDP keep complaining that the media is not paying attention to them, but I made a video on this. The NDP aren't doing anything media worthy. And I give a little bit more onus to the Liberals in terms of like giving them the benefit of the doubt, simply because they got rid of Bonnie. Even though Bonnie got to 30% of the vote, they got rid of her because she was functionally ineffective. She was too old for the job, and she wasn't living up to the moment. And right now, there's a lot of people who are trying to lead the Liberals, and that's great. I'm so happy they're having a competitive leadership race. But a lot of these people are same old, or they want to be that tough fighter. And I don't know if any of them have the juice.
Well, I was just before we did this, I went online to trying to jog the memory, and the Liberal AGM where Bonnie quit was in September. September 14th was the date of the Liberal AGM. We're recording this. It is November 11th, Remembrance Day. No leadership race has officially kicked off. No leadership race rules have been declared. And I know the Liberals are trying to put feelers of, we want, what do people want to see in this leadership race? And I'm kind of thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Like a leadership is a leadership race. You set your entry fees and you say, go at it, and may the best person win. My thoughts are, we've kind of just diagnosed the problem with the number skin. Like these are not. I don't think these are nothing burgers, as David Piccini describes them as. Yet the polls are showing, 52% approval in the province, and that's astounding to me, because I know you and I both know for a fact, if this was a Liberal government, there'd be how quickly can we turf them out of office? I mean, if they
would have died 17 scandals ago. Yeah, like
that's just it. Like if this was Justin Trudeau, we would have been like, there'd be a second convoy going around Queen's Park demanding his resignation. Yet his people, which apparently is 50% of Ontario, are.
So there's two major issues, right? So the NDP are the official opposition, but they are very limp right now. They're very weak. The NDP is trying to pretend like they're Liberals because they think that that's their path to success. But like the Liberals got 30% of the vote in the last election. The NDP got like almost half that, like 17%, 18%, whatever it was. Whatever their was, it wasn't good. but they're trying to be liberals. Here's the thing: the NDP and their voters complain that the media is not giving attention to the NDP. Well, be media worthy. Say something that is worthy of us listening to. Some good criticism, some good ideas, but they're being kind of feckless. They're not really doing a good job. It reminds me of the Democrats in the States. I'm getting like Chuck Schumer energy from the NDP right now, and like. That's not the vibes we want. We need high energy. We need not aggression, but we need passion, and we need to believe that there is a better future. 30% of people voted for the Liberals with one of the most unpopular liberal leaders in the last 30, 40 years. And that tells me that there is some opportunity for a new liberal leader to come in. But right now, the liberal leadership race, there's just a lot of names being thrown around. And I don't know if any of them have the juice. And like they're nice people, they're great people, but are they going to bring the fight to Doug Ford, and are they going to get the attention of people by being bold? And that's what I'm worried about. We're not going to have somebody come in with bold ideas to basically say like, hey, there is a possibility for a better Ontario. Let's do it. Let's build it.
And that's ultimately what I think comes down to is the opposition. I've been doing this podcast for about 5 years, and since day one, I've been saying the opposition is playing by an outdated rule book. They're playing by this idea of undersell, overperform. And I think in this day and age that, we look south of the border, Donald Trump has kind of torpedoed that. I think has just burnt that playbook. We know loud and obnoxious wins you attention, and you can carry that into victory. The fact that progressive parties, both north and south of the border, are doing this kind of meek and mild. Look how humble I am. It doesn't quite work out. I know there are some people saying, "Oh, but look at Mark Carney. He's a banker. How much more meek and mild can you get with a banker?" Mark Carney was talking about saying basically, "Fuck the Americans. Fuck the north-south trade routes. Let's go east-west. Let's go to the west, the Asian countries of the Pacific, and build trade routes there, and east to the Europeans."
Yeah, deepen our ties with Europe, expand ourselves into like different areas, and
Yeah,
reduce our reliance on the Americans. And maybe he hasn't been bold enough, but he has done something, right?
yes,
And I think that's what people want. They desire the viewpoint that somebody is going to do something and not just be the adult in the room. Because being the adult in the room obviously has not been enough to beat Doug Ford, because he's the uncle in the room, and nobody needs an adult in the room when you have a fun uncle. So
right. And that what astounds me is, we just recently had mid-September was the Liberal AGM. And we all know Bonnie Crombie had the illustrious victory turned to defeat of that. Yet, I mean, we've heard names battered around, but these are pollsters. I take that with a grain of salt, because the pollsters are what gave us Bonnie Crombie as the Liberal leader. She was told she's the only one who can beat Doug Ford, and we all know how that turned out. So when I hear pollsters saying, "Oh, like Andrew Brazzari," who, for the record, I think is a very interesting candidate and somebody I do think should be at Queen's Park, but he's the savior of the Liberal Party. As a timeout, I've heard this play being warmed up before.
And the thing is, the only people who really have ever heard of him are people who are paying attention to specific policies in the healthcare sector. It's not like he has been a well-known liberal establishment member, nor is he coming in as a grassroots guy who is really inspired. Like he just seems like he had a team that planted his name a bunch of times, not even during the AGM, but before that, because for the year prior to the election, or to the AGM, I had seen his name pop up a few times in articles here or there, which tells me that there was, for a while, an intention to have his name out there and floated. But like, do we need another person like that who's playing behind the scenes politics, or do we need somebody who actually can inspire the grassroots? And I'm not saying that he can't do that, but I want to see that from him before people start saying that he's going to be the guy who's going to beat Doug Ford.
And the problem with that is the party itself. I mean, we were September, October, November, we're 2 months in, and I'm still waiting to hear about the new leadership rules. And I think that's the problem, is anybody who's interested in throwing their hat in the ring, who says, "You know what, I'm going to take this on. I could do it." Everybody says mum until the leadership is actually cast. And I'm wondering, like, what is it like? Have the Liberals just lost their their mojo, had they lost their oomph, their fight. Because there was a time when you just said, okay, if I were doing leadership, boom, here are the rules, get going. And you would have had, 10 people chomping at the bit, some minor, some big name, but you'd have a fight for that leadership. And it was you generate ideas, you generate money, you generate new memberships, new interest, new people want to run for the party, and you re-energize the party. And right now, I don't see a party that's eager to have that conversation. It almost seems like they're afraid of
I think
being
what happened was
governed.
that Doug Ford is a name. Mark Carney was a name. Even though a lot of people weren't familiar with him, once you said, oh, Governor Bank of Canada, right, he becomes a name. Trump was a name. And so I think the Ontario Liberals keep defaulting to who is the biggest name that we have. And that is our best chance. And I don't think that a name is going to win you stuff. Let's look at Mamdani, right? Nobody knew who the hell he was. I started getting inklings from about him months ago because I'm a little bit more online and I see more of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, damn, this is interesting. Same thing with Obama, right? Obama was pretty much a nobody. And then he came out of nowhere. Why? Because it's not about being a name. It's about being a person who can inspire the grassroots, get those volunteers out, get people excited. And I think that the liberal establishment is very worried about trying somebody who might ruffle a few feathers and potentially not have things pan out because they just want to go with the safe option. And the easy option is who's got the biggest name. And I don't think that's going to do it for progressives in Ontario.
And we just talked about liberals. I want to switch to the other progressive party, the NDP. And that is, you just said they are for being a loyal opposition. And the idea is that they are the government in waiting, and I am amazed at how lackluster their performance has been overall. I know that Merit Stiles had her leadership review shortly after Bonnie Crombie's, and she didn't fare. I mean, I think numerically she did it a little bit better, but it wasn't a lock in. Like clearly,
it wasn't resounding,
right? But she decides to stay on.
But who do they have? Right? She ran basically. Did she run unopposed? I think she ran unopposed, right?
She ran unopposed. That was a big thing for us, was to say, I'm sorry, you're the opposition of, there should be a fight, a clawing at the door to get to the top job. And they basically said, no, they're just going to give it to Merit.
When she was the education critic, I was a big fan. I really thought that she had it. I thought that she could do more for the party. Mm-hmm. And it seems like her more for the party is listening to her advisors, and as we've seen time and time again, both provincially and federally for the NDP, their advisors just want them to be liberal lights, and that will fail every single time, because once a viable liberal option comes around, your liberal light strategy ends up getting left on the wayside. Right? You can't just wave a trans flag and say, oh, look, we're also progressive. Where are your progressive policies? They're too bogged down in ideological fights, saying, oh, yeah, we stand with unions and we stand with workers. But they don't really present enough ideas to get me inspired to say, this is how I see labor getting better in Ontario. And that's the whole point of opposition. The Liberals, at the very least, have been proposing policy and have been proposing legislation that obviously they know will go nowhere. But they're showing, hey, this is our idea on this thing. The NDP do not do that enough. And when they do, they don't advertise it enough. I'm not seeing a campaign or a fight. I'm just seeing them thinking that they're going to wait their turn. And I am sick of political parties in Ontario waiting their turn, because waiting your turn does not work with a guy like Doug Ford.
Well, what amazes me is Queen's Park, in the Doug Ford era, Queen's Park rarely sits for a legislative session. Now, yeah, I mean, that to me is, you can say, yeah, you're not doing your job, but you and I both know an MPP does do other work, that you're not just sitting and passing votes. But that also gives you, as the opposition, a good excuse to start touring the province and start going to those corners of the province that might not know you that well. I think, yes, I do believe the key to defeating Doug Ford is through the labor movement. I think a coalition needs to be found within labor, not just public, but also private sector unions as a starting point. And I've had Laura Walton on the podcast talk about that, and they're very much, they're gearing for a fight. So I mean, those are powerful allies to have in your back pocket. But as you said, I find that I think the NDP just kind of takes that relationship for granted. And it's just, oh, you're a union? Well, you're going to be voting for NDP, obviously. And
A progressive liberal candidate with strong union roots and an understanding of how to speak to working class people can absolutely eat the lunch of the NDP. And you have to remember that because of vote efficiency, even if the conservatives win 45% of the vote, a liberal party with 41% of the vote could either beat them or get enough seats that Doug would be held to a minority, and Doug cannot govern in a minority parliament. So, like, I think ultimately the best shot to getting rid of Doug Ford is for the Liberals to pick up the slack where the NDP are dropping the ball, because like it should be a slam dunk for the NDP, and they're just not doing it. They're not doing it.
and that's why I guess it's so frustrating with me is that you and I have gone over in-depth scandals that any other government, federal or provincial, this would have just, he should be just turfed to the curb.
Investigated by the RCMP as well, which 2 years later and nothing's been happening with that one.
That's the thing. It's both that's another thing. Liberals and the NDP are waiting for this miraculous RCMP report that's going to, I guess they're expecting the RCMP to show up in the squad cars and drag Doug Ford out with handcuffs
for Doug Ford and like yeah, it's not going to happen.
It never happens. The RCMP are scared of actually going after corrupt politicians. They learned their lesson with Ralph Goodale back in the day, and they realized we aren't getting involved with this. You don't like somebody, vote them out. It's just this passiveness of we're going to, somebody else is going to do it, and I'm wondering where how do you see the path forward? If you're an NDP or a liberal advisor, you're sitting down with the leader and saying, "Okay, what's the path forward?" I mean, I think we both established unions. We got to reach out and build those ties with the remaining unions who are not loyal to Doug Ford. But where's that next coalition that you need to build?
Millennial women in the GTA, soccer moms. That used to be the liberal bread and butter. And when the NDP won under Bob Rae, they also won that vote. What we're doing right now is we're forgetting about the fact that there is a whole generation of people, millennials, who are not the same as Gen X and boomers were. Millennials are not going to behave and react to things in the same way, because our generation has really not been given the same advantages or opportunities. And so when you talk about affordability, when you talk about creating jobs, when we do all these pushes for more, people need to actually be inspired and see something concrete, because millennials have been time and time again, our entire lives been disappointed. We went through 9/11 as children and the '08 financial crisis. We got into adulthood. There were supposed to be all these jobs. In 2015, when I graduated from university, we had some of the highest youth unemployment in the province. And now, 10 years later, we're redoing it all over again. COVID and all this other stuff, the cost of housing absolutely skyrocketing. Most millennials can't afford to buy a home. Gen Z is looking at things and it's absolutely abysmal. You want to inspire people? You got to not just inspire young people, because that's a real bullshit term. You have to inspire the specific demographic of younger people who are going to show up and vote. And that is millennial women, because women will always show up to vote for their kids. You are fighting for the future of children in this province. And if you don't take that to heart, you are not going to win.
Why aren't we talking about housing anymore? This time last year, we could not shut up about housing.
It's too difficult to build housing. Developers, it's so expensive. We can't give them enough tax cuts and money for them to build.
What I don't understand is, like, this time last year, I was doing episode after episode on housing, price of housing, cost of housing. Liberals were giving money to municipalities to build housing. Municipalities are trying to figure out how to hook new developments up to the grid and all this stuff. And the federal election happens, Pierre Poilievre gets turfed, and now nobody is picking up the housing baton. Yet we still have tent encampments in parks. We still have, I know that housing prices are collapsing. However, we're not building new housing. Like, there's no new supply. We still have people unable to afford a house.
I think that the undercurrent is, once we get rid of the temporary foreign workers and once we get rid of the international students, the strain on housing will be relieved. I think that people are looking for the easy answer. Oh, once we get rid of them, then there'll be enough housing for us. And the cost of condos are coming down. So maybe I can get my foot into the housing market by buying a condo in Toronto. Ultimately, what's happening is that people don't want big, audacious solutions because they are scary, and nobody wants to propose them because they are scary. And what that ends up happening is that we will complain about something up until the point where we realize nothing's going to happen because we're just doing the same neoliberal bullshit that we've been doing since the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And so people get fed up and they stop talking about these things. But we could build housing in Ontario. I don't understand what is so controversial about having a crown corporation just build shit. Like,
Well,
what's
actually,
so hard about that? We did it for decades.
we do have crown corporations. Every municipality, well, I don't know if every municipality, but majority of the 905 have. There's a regional housing corporation that is mandated to rent to income housing. I mean, we have the net mechanism. We can easily do it. And what I guess as a progressive, you know, you don't even have to say, "Oh, I need to create a whole new department of housing." It's like,
No,
no,
the infrastructure exists. We just have to
yeah,
use it and fund it.
right. And it's like, yeah, like it's just easy pickings to say to, as you said, to the millennial uh crowd, say, yeah, you know what? You do need to get out of your parents' basement. You do need a good place to live. Well, I'll allow quadplexes to be built as of right in municipalities across Ontario. Um, I'm going to empower municipalities to say to developers, yeah, you own this plot of land, you've got the permit, you have 1 year to build,
And
right?
if you're not building, then that land is unfortunately no longer going to be yours to use. The Ontario
Well,
government can expropriate and use it as they see fit.
that, or we start taxing it until it's sold off, like the last unit of the project is sold off.
Well, if the way I see it is that if there's a project where a developer says, I was going to build something here, but it's just too expensive, what's stopping the Ontario government from building that thing there on that land and basically saying to the landowner, hey, with interest, we're going to pay you back from the rent that we're collecting from this project that we are building because we are going to get housing built. Like I don't understand why we are letting people sit on unused land. We can
Right.
tax them, but as we've seen time and time again, taxes really don't incentivize people to do as
Mm.
much as you would think because they'll just hold out for the next conservative.
Fair enough. That's a good point. I see. Here's the thing. I think there's a variety of options. Like there, if you want to know what you arrow to use your quiver to tackle the house, I still think housing is the issue to go at. I'm astounded that it's been pushed to the wayside. Because I think we have abysmal job start. So like our employment numbers are abysmal in this province compared to the other 9 provinces in the country. Um, we don't have. I don't know what new business starts are like in this province. I don't think they're comparable.
Ontario is some of the slowest and lowest job growth in Canada, even though we're adding jobs at the federal level. Ontario is lagging behind. So that indicates that Ontario is not creating as many new businesses, which would then be hiring as we would like. And a
Well,
lot of these places that would normally hire seniors and young people are still hiring LMIA. And that's having a strain on the system because we're having people who are unemployed or underemployed.
how long do you how long do you think we can go on with the status quo? I mean, right now, let's face it, Doug Ford is in for the next 3 or 4 years.
Potentially five. Technically, he doesn't have to call an election until 2030.
Well, we'll see. Let's go with 4, split the difference. But you know, we, as they say, a year's a lifetime in politics. But you know, right now, all things being equal, like he's going to walk, him or his successor could probably walk into a another term in the office. I mean, are we looking at the onset of kind of another Tory dynasty akin to the post-war era?
I think the issue is that because of the first past the post system, because they will continue in the right areas, unless the parties are willing to work together, I really don't see the chance to bring Doug down to a minority. If Doug was held to a minority, there's no way he would stay in power. The parties need to work together. That's how I see it. The Greens, the NDP, and the Liberals need to be adults. They all want to have a leader who's the adult in the room,
Mhm.
act like adults, be pragmatic, do the right thing. The majority of people in Ontario want Doug Ford gone. So why don't you actually do what your voters want and get rid of Doug Ford? Work together. But they're too concerned about not being seen as legitimate parties if they don't run candidates in every single riding and if they
I
this and that and blah blah blah. Who cares? Just beat Doug. Beat Doug. That's all that matters.
I think the gap is too wide. Like you talk to an average NDP voter, an average Liberal voter, they're light years apart. It is a I mean, to me, it's a winnable solution if somebody actually does the work. I kind of look at, you mentioned Chuck Schumer earlier, and I look and I think of, as of recording this, we just got out of the Democrats caving to Trump on the shutdown, and I look at that and I say, yeah, those guys are cowards and they spineless and they can't stand up to the bully. And I wonder if that's how we describe the Liberal and the NDP right now in Ontario.
I
That
think it's because nobody's willing to do what's necessary. Be bold, take risks, and put your ego aside.
until then, I just I don't see anything changing in this province. Like my honest fear is that we just turn into kind of a kleptocracy. Like we
Well, we're already there. I mean,
we are
at a very
well,
minor scale.
yeah, but here's the thing, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Doug Ford has zero accomplishments to his name. Like every other premier, even
Has
Kathleen Wynne,
done something.
has done something that said, "Here's my legacy. This is going to stand the test of time." And I mean, I'll even say Kathleen Wynne will stand the test of time because all the stuff that Doug Ford canceled, he later brought back because, oh, hey, it worked. Same as Dalton McGuinty. Hell, even Ernie Eves and Mike Harris had stuff that we're still dealing with. Doug Ford, I do not, for the life of me, and I will invite any progressive conservative to come on and prove me wrong, but I do not know of a single policy or program that will last.
His legacy is just underfunding things. Like ultimately, the legacy of Doug Ford is not what is going to be remembered as like a great time of building, but these people are basically thinking, what can I do to enrich myself the way that Mike Harris enriched himself, right? When Mike Harris privatized long-term care and his wife started running one of the largest private nursing companies in Ontario, and he joined the board for a company for a massive long-term care company, he was essentially enriching himself. And Doug Ford, Stephen Lecce, and David Bikini and Paul Calandra are all looking for how they can privatize healthcare and education so that they can make their way out and so that they can retire with a comfy job, being the director or the chair of a board for a company that has privatized another one of our industries. They're not in it for the average person. They're really in it for their own personal legacy, and their own personal legacy is their financial legacy that they can pass down to their children. They don't give a shit about Ontario. If they did, they would be building stuff, and they're not building anything.
And yet somehow the NDP and the Liberals can't sell that to Ontario.
Because they're feckless. They
And
don't have they're just not willing to say what needs to be said.
it sounds. There are times when I just bang my head against the wall, say like this stuff is easy to figure out, and I do wonder. I maybe this is a case of social media, the algorithm. We're all in our own little bubbles, and we're all siloed away from each other. But you talk to anybody, and the stuff that you and I are talking about, you know, better programs, funding housing, infrastructure, high, all that stuff, better healthcare, better funding for schools, all that stuff. Trying to be ambitious. I'm even thinking like maybe there's some way to figure out the tuition on your first round of post-secondary is free. Funding post-secondary, that kind of thing. All that stuff, people say, yeah, we should be doing that. And yet it's somehow it's just, oh no, we can't. There's a problem. We can't sell it. And it's just, then what are we going to do? Because the other thing is, I'm wondering if the Trump. This is the other point we didn't mention it before, but I do want to bring it up now. Is the tariff war? Doug Ford got reelected on this. I'm going to tell Donald Trump what's for, and
where have they gotten us?
Well, even that, like most recently, he posted. I'll be honest, it was a good ad. The ad with Ronald Reagan decrying tariffs and advocating for NAFTA at the time. It was a good ad, and I was like, all right, great. And of course, he pissed off Donald Trump, and he walks away from the bargaining table, and Mark Carney's stuck there like, WTF? What do I do? And that's where I realized there is no fucking plan in Ontario. Because the question is, if you're a communications guy, okay, that's the first salvo. We're throwing that out on
What
the
do we
TV.
do with it?
What comes next? I was like, great, Doug. What's next?
Dog chasing the car. That's what
Right.
they've always been.
It's like, so we just kicked over the table. So that was the equivalent of, you walked into the conference room, Donald Trump on one side, Mark Carney on the other, hashing it out, trying to get a deal. And you walk in the room, you kick it over, and you say, I win, and you walk out. What did you accomplish other than you piss off everybody in the room? I personally, I'm wondering if
he increased his approval rating by a couple percent. It was worth it.
I guess so, but I mean, I think if you were approving of Doug Ford for that, the question is, like, what now? Like, what do we have to show for it? He kicked over the table. He gave a middle finger to Donald Trump. Great, wonderful.
People hate Trump so much that they're just so desperate to see somebody tell Trump to take to shove it, right? And if Doug's gonna tell Donald Trump to shove it, he's gonna be the one to profit from the frustrations of the average person in Ontario. And like, that's not how we should be governing. But like, at the end of the day, it's a game. It's a game for Doug Ford.
But you can do that. But then I say, okay, guess what? Give the finger to Donald Trump and get on the plane and say, I'm going to Europe and I'm going to go tell the Spaniards and the French and the Germans and the Italians, you got to go set up your car factories in Ontario, and you got to go buy Ontario-made goods and services, and we're going to build windmills, and we're going to build your power plants. We're going to ship it over there, and you're going to install it. You're going to pay us all this money for it.
Because that's logic doesn't. You have to remember, logic doesn't apply to the Ford government. Like, for example, you mentioned wind and solar. Something like 90% of all of the electrical install over the world of the last year was wind or solar, and Ontario hasn't built a new wind or solar in 7 years.
But he was going to give he was going to bring back Kathleen Wynne's energy plan to build wind farms. But he just said, I'll just let the municipalities choose where they go. And you realize, no, it doesn't work that way. You build them where the wind blows, which means you're going to piss off somebody. But here's the thing. We can all still hear, and nobody's got cancer from the windmills. So build the fucking things, generate the electricity, get a surplus going, give us cheap electricity, and then, you tax the shit out of that when it crosses the American border. Yeah, sell it to Minnesota. Minnesota, great people, love them. They're nice. They're basically Canadians. Too bad you live on the wrong side of the line. You get 100% tariff on the
Minnesota and New York need our electricity.
They do.
It's not a major part of their grid, but it's a substantial part of their grid. If we could get back into an energy surplus and sell that, not only are we creating money for Ontarians, but we're also creating an opportunity to give us some more leverage. But Doug isn't interested in that, because there's nothing in it for him. At the end of the day, that's what always comes back to me. With the actions of this conservative government, if there's nothing in it for them as individuals, as a party, why are they doing it? Because that's what it always comes back to.
Yeah. And yet, again, full circle, the NDP and the Liberals cannot figure out a way to sell this to the Ontario public, to say he's not in it for you. And
Doug Ford doesn't care about the average person's family. He doesn't care about their education. He doesn't care about their health care. Doug Ford doesn't care if you can afford to live or afford to eat. Doug Ford just cares about what's in Doug Ford's best interest. And that is typically being loved and liked by rich people, because Doug Ford has daddy problems. And the only way that he knows to feel fulfilled is to have rich and powerful people pat him on the back and say, good job, Doug. So he always listens to the richest person in the room. And that's not how we should be running this province.
No, I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do better. My worry is clearly the American car manufacturers in this province have no loyalty to Canada or Ontario. My bet is, we know Stellantis is packing up shop to cross the border. I believe GM has also talked about either re-examining Oshawa to shut that down, if I'm not mistaken. My question is, how long till Ford says, "Yep, we can redo everything in Michigan."
Just a heads up, I only got like 5% left on my phone.
No, it's
a second.
That being said, I think that this is where we could just wrap it up, because I honestly don't know what the future is. I think it's a matter of just highlighting this stuff to say, yeah, I told you so. Because until the Liberals and the NDP get their shit together, I don't see an actual dialogue of change happening.
And our only hope is with a new Liberal leader, because the NDP have decided that they're going to stick with what hasn't been working. So that's where my energy is focused on. It's going to be bringing attention to that and trying to get people inspired. And hopefully we come out of this with somebody who can actually kick Doug Ford's ass.
See what happens in the new year. All right. Thank you very much, Frank. All the best to you. Stay cool. I'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Motherhood is complex. One minute you're soaking up the sweetest, most heart-melting moments with your kids, and the next you're hiding in the pantry with a fistful of chocolate, wondering if you're the only one making it all up as you go. Spoiler, we all are. I'm Scotty, a mom of 3, life coach and intuitive who finally said, screw it. I'm done trying to do motherhood the quote right way, and I started trusting my mom tuition instead. Because the right way is whatever works for you. Momplex is where we cut through the noise, ditch the guilt, and figure out how to actually enjoy being a mom without losing ourselves in the process. I'm not here to tell you how to parent. I'm here to help you stop overthinking, stop comparing, and stop feeling like you're failing because you're actually doing so much better than you think. This is a real, unfiltered, explicit as hell mom talk that you will not get in the carpool line. So let's do this. Real convos, lots of laughs, and a whole lot of truth bombs. Welcome to Momplex. P.S. This podcast is explicit. So unless you want your kids casually dropping F-bombs at preschool, grab your earbuds, mama.
Hi, it's Ashley and Jess with Wellness Reality Check. We are 2 health practitioners, moms, and best friends trying to navigate the world of holistic health in a balanced, productive way that brings health to our lives instead of dogmatic extremes. We'll be breaking down health trends, interviewing your favorite health influencers, and always keeping it real. We hope this podcast brings listeners back down to earth, providing a dose of reality in the often idealized world of health and wellness.
Wellness Reality Check. Follow the show now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at wellnessrealitycheck.com.